Yo guys, what is up? Welcome back to some more Zero Hour. So obviously the other day, EA dropped this massive update on us, releasing the source code, releasing patch 1.05 and the Steam Workshop update. And people have got loads of questions, so I put out on social media and on my channel for any questions you guys had. I think I've answered most of them, but there may be some questions I'm missing, so we may do one again in the future. I think I missed some of the questions on my YouTube community post, but this is going to be with Xezon. This is going to be probably one of the main guys who is going to be leading the development of Zero Hour going forward. He understands C++, he understands the source code, he understands loads of stuff that me and you probably don't know, and he's going to be leading the development of Zero Hour going forward, plus a bunch of other people. He's also the guy that made Gentool, and he's so invested in Zero Hour, it's really cool to hear him speak. So yeah, let's jump straight into it. Yeah, thanks for agreeing to doing this. I think it will be very interesting for the viewers, especially at this time. And I know you like talking about Zero. You're probably I know you're very excited. You want to talk about the news, and if it's a success, maybe we can do another one in the future. I also was speaking to CC Hyper, and I'm actually like amazed. He messaged me yesterday and offered me to do an interview with CC Hyper and Jim Vasella. Can you imagine that?
Wow, that is big. Wow. Yeah,
So yeah,
that's great. Yeah.
I'm super
Congratulations.
excited.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think Legionnaire will be on it as well, but yeah, he said like I'll be asking like 75% of the questions, and Legionnaire will chip in as well. So yeah, a little bit nervous actually speaking to Jim Vasella.
Shaking. That's good. Well, the respect is there, right? Especially now, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, first of all, then I thought I'd do a little bit of like an intro for yourself. So we might have like some newcomers coming back to the game. Maybe they last played in like 2005 or something like that. Maybe they got fed up with the issues, and maybe now they're thinking about coming back to the game. And maybe they don't know exactly who you are. So could you do a bit like an intro for yourself? Like how long have you been involved with the game? I know you've got a YouTube channel, which I'll link people to, and you're posting videos there. Just like maybe a bit of an intro for yourself.
Oof. I typically not a big fan of talking of myself. I mean, typically people know. Yeah, I think I started playing 2005 or so. Yeah, so 1 year after release. And yeah, I joined at the good times when the cheating was rampant, right? Yeah, and the servers were still well and running. The lobbies were full, and everyone was enjoying the non and the cheat infested games and big flame wars in the lobbies, but always amazing games with the best pro rules and the best rule breaks. And yeah, years have passed. Gentool was released. I think community was very happy about this over the span of 15 years. But it looks like now there will be a paradigm shift, and we will excel what we have been built in the past with more to come, I hope, and I think.
Okay, cool. And yeah, I mentioned you have a YouTube channel. You've been working on this project Thyme, and you've been posting videos on there, I think, pretty much most days. Do you plan now to continue that? I saw you posted some already. Now that the source code is released, do you plan to continue to post regular updates there?
Yeah. Every time I work, I create a recording every day, and I just basically show what I do, and I just talk about what I do, and any problems I run into, or any accomplishments. Sometimes I talk about topics when I find them interesting. So, for example, yesterday I've made a review of your video, your 15-minute video on the release of the source code. So I talked about that, and yeah, I think it's not big extra work for me to just start a recording and just talk as I do things. So like, it's just natural.
Yep. Yeah, I saw your reaction to my video. I was panicking a little bit, thinking I'm going to say something wrong in this video and Xezon's going to correct me. But I was actually quite happy you agreed with most of it. So, okay, so EA obviously released this massive news and update the other day, including the release of the source code. They've released this update for the Steam Workshop. They've released the archive footage, this modding support pack, and this patch 1.05. Besides the source code, are you interested in any of those other things that they've released, or for you is it like only the source code matters?
It's a good question. I haven't seen this video yet. That 40 minutes video. Probably check it when I want to. Yeah, I did see there was some release about some like map files also in another repository. I didn't look at that. I didn't download the Steam version yet. I didn't see the Steam workshop. Yeah, I think it's safe to say I'm mostly excited about the source code because that is a piece that matters the most, and I think it shows in the reaction of the community. Everyone is overwhelmingly positive about this, and I think EA has never gotten more praise and appreciation and respect than at this very day on Thursday. Yeah, it's remarkable.
Mm-hmm. And for anyone who's maybe like not as technically minded as yourself, or maybe doesn't know what source code is, could you explain like what that is in your words, and like what that means we're now able to do now that's out there?
Yeah, I mean, basically, a game has building blocks, right? It needs to be spawned from something, right? Everything starts with a computer that you launch, then the operating system launches, and then you launch your game. And that part where you launch the game, now we have full control over all its aspects. So the code that is responsible for running all the logics, all the renderings, all the sound, the inputs, everything that happens in the game can be fixed, can be improved, can be built on, and yeah, it's something that I've been looking for now since 4 years to achieve. And I was prepared to spend more years getting there, but now there's a shortcut, and yeah, I think many people realize what kind of big deal this is. And I think everyone else, they will, once we can release some outstanding new additions that hopefully will bring tears also into the players' eyes. Right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So they also released this patch 1.05. Now the other day I was streaming a match and it was Tumstep against someone in the $1,000 tournament that we have going on. And Tumstep, for whatever reason, had to restart his game. And when he restarted his game, it seemed like patch 1.05 installed automatically. And when he booted up his game, he ran into issues straight away. I think it's because it's not compatible with Gentool. So he sent me a screenshot of his game, and like, it might be because he's got the custom control bar, but all of like the bottom half of the screen was black, and it caused an issue. And he was like panicking for 20 minutes, and he had to sort it out. If that happens for anyone, because I think it's happening to a few people right now, what is the recommended fix? Like, how easy is it to return to patch 1.04 or for a new Gentool release? What do you say to those people?
Yeah, I mean, if players want to use Gentool right now, it's not adapted yet to the new version. It's not compatible. It launches in reduced feature mode, so there's some functionality, but yeah, many of the features that rely on binary compatibility are not available, including like this control bar screw up, visual glitching, and the camera zoom and all this stuff, right? Yeah, I'm not sure what the best strategy with Steam is. You would need to basically replace game.dat with the previous version, 1.04. I think GenPatcher distributes it. So that there will be like a button like patch my game, and then I think it will install 1.04, but I'm not 100% sure because typically I do it manually on my machines. I actually never use any of these tools. But yeah, right now players can go back if they want to use Gentool, otherwise they can use 105. It is multiplayer compatible as far as I'm aware. Legionnaire said that with 1.04. Right, so 1.05 players can play with 1.04 players in the network room, at least. I'm not sure about the online lobby if there will be a version mismatch, because the room does actually check version, so there might be a mismatch. But yeah, technically the game is compatible. Gentool update. I have sent a request to Hyper to help me with something to speed this up. So I'm waiting on him right now. But yeah, the work would be on me to do it. But yeah, I'm busy with so many things right now. Yeah, but it probably will be done. Yeah, the update. Yeah.
Okay. So in the short term, we're basically saying the quickest way to fix that, if your game does the update automatically, would be to run genpatcher, it sounds like, and revert your game.dat file back. Would it be also any value for us to maybe get a copy of that game.dat file if that's the only file that is needed and share that publicly? Or do you think only genpatcher is the recommended way?
Yeah, there is actually a on Gentool /download. There
Okay.
is a folder. What is it called? Let me see. Executables, and there is the 1.04 game dot in there. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe I can link that in the description then, because not a lot of people probably know about that Gentool downloads link, or maybe they do. Maybe it's just me.
Actually, maybe that's misinformation. There's not a game dot. There's a generals.exe, so maybe it's different. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I would say refer to genpatcher. That's probably the safest. Yeah. There's just a click of a button and ready to go. Yeah.
Okay. I suppose I don't want to dwell on this for too long, but I suppose if they do run genpatcher, there's a chance that the next time they close the game down or whatever, the EA app or Steam might try to automatically update your game again. Is that right?
Oof, that's a good question. I'm not sure. I hope not.
Okay.
I hope Steam is smarter than this. I think not, because like for example, I know when your game is corrupted in some ways, then Steam won't detect that. Then you have to go into the settings and then click on repair install, and then it will make the file validation checks, and then it will re-download things that are mismatching from expected file.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think there's a good chance that it just happens once. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. And I heard your reaction video when the source code came out, and you nearly cried on the video, which I thought was really really a special moment for you. Can you tell us why does this the whole thing mean so much to you? Like, why does it mean that much to you?
It's a good question. Uh, it's hard to describe. I, maybe it's stupid, but I'm just very passionate for this game, and I just want this game to be like an amazing experience for players and for myself, of course, as well. Eventually, to play again, right, at some point. But although I expect that I would just be stuck in developing instead of playing myself. But I don't know. I just I enjoyed playing Zero Hour in the past, and I do enjoy improving the game and making fixes for it. And it's something. It's an activity I just enjoy doing. It's and especially for this game, I don't care about other games. Don't care about StarCraft 2 or any of the newer titles. I don't care. And I think Generals Zero Hour is a very unique game that can be outstandingly exciting to play and also to watch on video presentations. And I think you can see that when there's big tournaments and big players fighting with each other, and everyone is excited, and the chat is spamming, and there are good memes, and happy people, happy players, happy viewers. And yeah, I just I like to see this. It makes me happy to make the game great. I also like I like the game content itself, like how the game works, how it looks. Yeah, it sounds good. It looks still okay, right? Despite its age, I think the units and the buildings still look fairly well. Maybe there's some ugly things here and there, like for example the legacy control bar that was a little bit of an abomination, right? But yeah, it's a fantastic game, and I hope that there's more better things to come for it.
Okay. And obviously on my previous video, and I think you've already mentioned it too, the project that you've been working on, I think Project Thyme, I think you call it Thyme, has been worked on by various people for 8 years, and I know over the last few months you've invested a lot of time into it. If you'd have kept going with that, let's say the source code didn't get released and you kept going with that for the next 5 to 10 years, would you have ended up in the end with exactly what EA has released, or would it be 99% or 90% or 100%?
It would be nearly not as great as the original, that's for sure, because the original does not just ship like core game code, but also all the debug for the game. So like this is good for developers who want to add new features or figure out things or debug something. And it also contains all the tools to build game content, game files, data. So that is really fantastic that they include everything. It's a whole package. Everything is there. So we basically now have access to all parts of the game. Everything can be fixed and improved. And what was your original question?
I was basically saying, would you have got
If it's
there
better.
in the end?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I don't think we would have gotten there. We probably would have spent 5+ years on this more. I mean, it was now in development for 8 years on and off, right? So I mean, people not always 100% committed because it is a draining thing. But recently we had like good ideas and good steam, and I was last 5 months I spent every day working on tooling for like upcoming strategies to do the reverse engineering efforts. And before that, I mean, obviously Omniblade and Thompson's and Jonathan Wilson, they were the main characters to drive the bulk of the developments. So most credits go to them for the original a push for this thing, especially Omniblade and Thompson's. And I mean, I spent a lot of time, but these guys probably even more than I did, right? So yeah, I think a lot of man hours were spent on this, but they were not all for vain. I think there were a lot of learnings, and all of us who worked on this, we already go in there with a wealth of knowledge about this engine and the game codes, at least for 50% of it, right? That as Thyme that I call it has progressed, and it's it now you can't say it was a wasted effort, but some people also have the theory that perhaps this kind of effort, this push that we try to do there with achieving a clone, a binary compatible clone, was maybe reason for EA to be inspired to consider open sourcing the source code for the game. Some people theorize this, I don't know, but it certainly could be the case. So that would be at least some reward for the hard work that was put over the years. Yeah.
Okay. And in the gaming industry, like reverse engineering a game, I've never even really heard about that before, apart from in Zero Hour. I mean, I don't know about every game, but is that typically like a thing that people do in other games, or is it like kind of exclusive, just a really special project that you guys were trying to accomplish?
Actually, no. There's a long list of games that have dedicated reverse engineering efforts by different kinds of people. So it's not unique to Zero Hour. There are all sorts of projects that do this. And some projects obviously with more success than others. Some projects may fail. Some may never get done. Some projects may get done, but then maybe they get in trouble with the publisher of that game, right? There are some game studios or corporations that are not very fond of this practice, and I think we can be very fortunate that EA is of another caliber and goes totally against the trend, because releasing a source code for a commercial game, keep in mind this game is still being sold right now, and the day releases is outstanding, and it's not something that we should take for granted. It's something that we can be infinitely grateful for. And and that's just my suggestion, I can only recommend anyone who already owns the game or wants to check out the game to just go to the Steam store or EA app and just buy the game. Um, and even if you already own it, just view it as a donation to EA, because in this instance they have absolutely earned it, because this is an extraordinary event and opportunity for us. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I did check on Steam, and they've got 70% off the Command & Conquer Ultimate Collection now, which is a crazy amount of games. Is it like 17 games included or something? And it's like 70% off means you can get all of them games now for $7. So pretty much
cheap. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe buy 2 copies then.
Okay, so I heard that with the source code, something got removed from it and is not publicly available, which are these things called libraries. I don't know really what that is. I kind of maybe have an idea, but I'm probably wrong. Can you tell us any more about that? Or
Yeah, sure, no problem. So libraries are modules that the game uses, that it builds upon the engine and the game, but are not necessarily things that were authored by Electronic Arts themselves. So think of like the same way that they built on top of Windows, the operating system, they may also build on top of other libraries that enable them to use certain functionality in their programs, right? And some of these might be like have special licenses, or maybe they are proprietary and they have licensed back in the day, and then they cannot release this because it's not theirs. They didn't create it. Some other company or some other developers have created it. And that's why they said, okay, we just strip these things. We tell you what it is, what you need, and then you can figure out how you can combine these things to get all the building blocks in place to then build the engine, which we currently do. And some people have actually already managed to put everything in place and already run it. And yeah, this is something, it's a little bit of an exercise to begin with, but yeah, we figure this out, and then once this is in place, we're good to go.
Okay. So it got mentioned that these libraries being removed would make it a lot harder for potential bad actors to come and potentially use that for cheats, use this source code for cheats in the game. But you just said that some guys have rebuilt this in literally a couple of days. So if some guys have rebuilt this in a couple of days, what's stopping bad actors from also rebuilding that in a couple of days? Or is it people like Omniblade only with a very special set of skills doing this?
Well, it's all experienced programmers are doing this. So they're like, yeah, different kinds of people have a go at this, and I think that's good. Everyone tries their own thing. And yeah, I mean, it now means that bad actors could make a multiplayer compatible compilation and then run that and maybe add some features that bring them some great advantages in multiplayer. So certainly that is the downside. Will it be a big problem? I don't know. Hopefully not. I guess it would have been in the past when the cheating was rampant. Yeah, it's. I think this is motivation for us to in the future look into solutions to mitigate this kind of problems. And yeah, because I mean the game will always be open source, right? Everyone can touch it and change it. And we will need to come up with nice strategies to make it hard, or maybe even possible for cheaters to mess with the game, which is certainly on the plate. Yeah, but I think it's a very hard topic. Yeah.
Okay. So as I understand it, we now have the source code for the game, and I heard that the next step is something called compiling that source code. So this is kind of new to me, or I have a vague idea of what that might be. But to someone who has no idea what compiling is, or if we were explaining this to like a 12-year-old, how would you explain that, and what is that exactly, compiling?
Compiling is when you translate the source code that EA has released to a machine code. In this case, for Windows, that will be x86 assembler instructions. And those are the instructions that are in the game.dat or in the generals.exe files that just provide the logic to the CPU to perform the operations on memory and present the game the way we expect it to be. So basically, the source code itself is just tells the compiler how the logic should be, and then the compiler translates it into a new language that is catered towards feeding this information to the CPU on runtime. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, kind of. You mentioned x86 there in there, which I think is 32-bit. Is that correct?
That's right. Yes.
So there was talk on the Discord chat about upgrading to 64-bit. I think that's the way the world is heading and pretty standard now. Is that in the realms of possibility? Is that impossible? What issues might we run into trying to do that?
Yeah, it's absolutely possible. And I think people probably already looking into such things. I don't think that anyone has it running yet, and probably will take a bit to do it properly. Challenges. We will need to replace some of these libraries, which would be 32-bit only. So, for example, the Miles Audio Manager and the Bing Video, they are proprietary and they are 32-bit only, the DLLs. And so they would need to be swapped for some new libraries. And of course, there's also the topic of the thing. So basically, since you have more address space, it's going to be a bit more technical, but let me explain. Since you have more address space, 64 bits means that the virtual allocator allows you to address anything in this 64-bit address range. That means you need an 8-byte pointer which has a 64 bits, right? And this pointer is twice the size in bytes than the 32-bit pointer, which is 4 bytes, 32 bits. And the game will do things where they push the 8-byte pointer then into 4-byte integers, and that will cause all sorts of problems. So those places need to be identified. I think there are some of these places in the UI message stream, I think, somewhere. We've already seen it in Thyme project. And so these places need to be identified, fixed, and there are probably some other things which I don't have on the radar now. But yeah, it certainly will be possible to do this. Yeah, and it will be at a great benefit, I think. Yeah, but I think it's not like ultimately necessary to do this. I think it's still fine to keep the 32-bit compatibility. Because there is something to say about being able to compile 32-bit. It's smaller, and preserving the original game is something that's to be desired. So no need to drop the old one if you can preserve it. But certainly 64-bit will be great, because some mods probably looking at adding huge models and textures, right, making everything more beautiful.
Okay. So for someone like me, then I have a 64-bit PC. Let's say we got this change through and the game became 64-bit. what noticeable changes might a player like me notice off the bat?
Well, I mean, 64-bit allows you to use more memory. 32-bit application typically caps at 2 gigabytes, right? With extended, I think you can get it to 3 or maybe 4 when you boot your operating system in a certain modes. But yeah, typically it caps at 2 gigabytes. So if your mod uses more than that, then it would be able to run on 64 bits. Otherwise, I don't expect that it will bring performance improvements. I don't think so. But I mean, I guess it could be measured. If anything, actually, I would expect it to be a tiny bit slower, but we're talking like minuscule, very less than 1%, right? So yeah, I don't know. I don't think you will notice anything. The game, when done right, should behave exactly the same, right?
Okay. Is that in any way linked to when I'm playing a free for all with 6 players and we have 10,000 units on the screen and the game crashes and all the units stop moving? Is that in any way linked to that or not?
Likely not. Likely
Okay.
not. There can be scenarios where you maybe have a memory leak, yeah, and then the memory raises into dangerous sizes, like a 2 gigabyte ranges, and then 64-bit would be more resilient here at this point. But then this just means that the problem is elsewhere, where the memory is getting leaked and grows your process to absurd sizes, right? So no, I don't think that the 32-bit nature, in principle, is a problem for this game because it was built this way, and the game data uh, typically consumes way less than 2 gigabyte. I think like typically it runs at 500, 600 megabyte or so in a typical session, right? Which is reasonably low, right?
Okay. And so I heard that Zero Hour only runs on one core of your CPU. Is any of this in any way linked to that as well?
You mean to link to 64-bit?
Yeah, linked to this conversation, or is that a different topic?
I think that is mostly because at the time when this game was developed in the early 2000s, or maybe even in the late 90s, that processors were not yet equipped with dual cores en masse. So I think the single processors were still pretty normal. And yeah, I think the multi-threaded architecture was not yet a big thing. And I mean, the engine also evolved over time, right? So Westwood built other games before that, and they probably like moved their engine from one project to the next, and then they improved it for the next generation of the game. But core principles from previous games resided, and I think that's just the way it naturally evolved into an engine that mostly runs on a single thread.
Okay. And now then, do we have the possibility to use multi-thread? So like my PC, I'm thinking has like 16 cores apparently. So am I now able to use those 16 cores in the future, do you think?
Yeah, it depends on where we can identify pieces of code that can run in parallel, right? So typically, how the architecture works is you have render frames and you have logic frames in this type of game. So the logic frame is like one frame where the logic ticks to the next frame where the next game updates happen to all the units and so on. And I think in Zero Hour in Generals, this logic frame is 15 times a second, right? So if you had 30 FPS, then that would be every second frame. And 30 FPS, that refers to the render time, what we call frame time. So a frame takes a certain time to go from the beginning to the end to prepare everything that we want to draw freshly onto the screen. That's one render frame or one frame. And yeah, so we need to identify what we can find in there that we could parallelize, or also called Jobify, run in parallel. But it can be easy for some isolated things, but it can also be very challenging for some more complex systems, because when the initial architecture, the way they programmed it back in the day, is like all catered towards a single thread model, then it is very likely that logics will be intertwined left and right, and it will be hard to detangle certain things, right? And you need to be very careful if you move something to a thread and you're not careful about the accesses to the data that that thread writes to or reads from, then you could potentially cause catastrophic race conditions. So if someone attacks approaches this topic, needs to be very well versed in multi-threading and needs to be an absolute expert on this field. That's, I think, very important. Maybe some tasks will be simpler, but I expect some things can be very hard. But yes, I think it's very desirable to identify like performance culprits in general, right? Because I think there's a lot of, I expect that there will be a lot of optimization potential. For example, we know that the Dragon tank with the flame wall, right, that can cause quite some lags, especially when there are multiples flaming the base, right? Or a path finding that is also a notable offender for performance drops when there's some units trying to find some weird paths over 1,000 bridges, and then that logic becomes very expensive. So there will be different kinds of bottlenecks that you need to identify, and then you need to figure out, okay, how can we implement this to speed it up? And so there will be different classifications. Threading is one of the things to make things faster, but there's also the cost of algorithms, and there's also the cost of CPU time and data time. So, for example, like the more data your CPU interacts with, needs to pull, cache misses, and so on, that also slows down things. So there are many things that contribute to poor performance. And so the strategy there is to profile it, look at it, which systems, which functions are expensive, and then figure out how to fix it, ideally in a way that it does not break the game and does not change behavior.
Okay. Okay. So I know you have this call in about an hour and 15 minutes, I think, which is basically a team of volunteer developers, as I understand, that Legionnaire is trying to pull together. I saw that I think there's 130 people at least volunteered for that. So I don't know. There'll be a lot of people on one call. But I just wondered, do you have any thoughts on that? How do you think the call will go? Do you plan to try and lead this team? And will someone, even with limited C++ skills, I believe that's the programming language required, be of any use at all? Let's say they've had a few months training. Is that of any use?
That's a good question. So I think it's a very good effort by a community outpost to like plan like a proper project setup and gather people and try to assign tasks and responsibilities and like set out greater goals. So I don't know anything in details yet. I will be also just attending and listening, I guess. Maybe I can say some things if someone cares. But I will listen and see what they do. I think I don't know who signed up there. I think there will be talented programmers left and right. I think there will also be users who are maybe more inclined to do like testing things or reviewing things or suggesting things, ideas, or supporting, or something like that, or managing, right? So I think there are many different disciplines, and the more people you have to do things, then I think that's great. One of the things that was always missing in the past is like someone who drives it from like a management point of view, these kinds of efforts, and so I'm looking forward to it. What was the other part of your question?
I was basically saying, even if someone has limited skills, like in C++, maybe a few months training, is that of any use at all? Is there anything they can do, or not?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, when I started Gentool, I also was a noob, right? I didn't know much. So I think for some people, the best thing to do is simply learning by doing, jumping in and trying to figure out things. Obviously, there needs to be a lot of scrutiny, right? So if someone makes a change and then they create a pull request on GitHub and then want to merge it into our mainline, then there will be heightened scrutiny because we need to make sure that we don't invite anything breaking in there or anything detrimental or poorly designed. So I expect that seasoned, experienced programmers, they would probably have an easier go at this, and someone who is just jumping in or didn't do much before probably will take longer. Or yeah. But yeah, I think anyone giving it a try, I think it's well worth it if they enjoy to do it. So yeah, I think anyone can do it.
Okay. I think I saw you write somewhere that the success of a project like this would be determined by not only volunteers, but volunteers who dedicate a longer period of time to it, not someone who just shows up for a week or two. And it would be those longer serving people, probably like yourself, Omniblade, these such people. But anyone who comes and just chips in for a month or a few weeks, can that help too? Or is that of no use at all?
Yeah, I think even short-term contributors can be of use, but certainly like the long-term, that's obviously the most valuable. You want to bind people long-term. Like a Linux developer who develops 30 years, like this kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, if someone just has limited time and maybe just wants to add a few things here and there, then I mean, it still accumulates, right? If you have 10, 15, 20 people of this, you get some nice changes here and there eventually, or some inspiration or some ideas. Then yeah, just go ahead and try it out.
Okay. And what do you think is the number one thing inside the game that needs to be fixed? I mean, I know you've already been working on the game patch, and I wanted to ask you as well, maybe how does that fit into it? Do you start with that as a base? But what's the number one thing you think should be fixed in the game?
Number one thing, well, stability in general, right? Um, I mean, for me, I like to, I would like to see 0 hour, and that's my goal, to see it in an absolutely flawless state, where it runs well, it performs well, it looks well, and it plays well, right? So technically and gameplay wise, it's just a pleasure to interact with the game. That's my goal. So there are many things, and I can't pick out anything. I mean, crashes are bad, mismatches are bad, network problems are bad, everything is bad. Yeah. So yeah, anything. Yeah.
Okay. Do you see it that you would work on kind of one big patch, and then after maybe a year or maybe even longer, you would release that and that would fix everything? Or do you see a world where in a few months, let's say you've fixed 99% of mismatches, there might be a patch dropped that people could realize the benefits of that quicker than waiting for one giant patch?
I actually had a meeting with Ligonier about just this yesterday. He was talking about his strategy, and I really like his vision of trying to push like smaller changes first, but like important ones, and then just build it up over time, like make small incremental changes and just onboard the player population over time. And so this is something that was never done from like the efforts that I did, because I never really like planned for like organizing test sessions or I didn't want to deal with this kind of things. I would just wanted to build, right? And so I think here's a great opportunity to collaborate now with Legionnaires team efforts to like have shared responsibilities. or let's say separated responsibilities, not shared ones, separated. So like have people who organize like the goals for the next release, organize a priority of what needs to go in, things like this. And then other people focus on like implementing these things, and other people are then responsible for testing all the things and making sure everything works correctly. I think that's a way to go, that, you have this different disciplines. And I think it would also help me a lot, because then I can like just focus on the technicals, and not care so much about like all the distribution strategies, and the play tests and the goals and all this kind of stuff, right?
Okay. Where do you think your game patch fits into all of this? Because I know in there, I think you fixed many issues already. Do you use that as a base, or do you need to convince everyone this is the right path to go first?
Yeah, that was also part of the conversation I had with Legionnaire. It's not yet clear to me. I mean, my recommendation is to. So Legionnaire has a desire, and I respect his desire to dial down the any changes that are controversial and any changes that change game state towards 1.04, at least for the beginning, right? And I think that's a reasonable approach to dial back. So my suggestion was to use the work that we have started 3+ years ago as a base, but add a new method to compile out certain changes that are currently in there, but we can build it in a way that we don't use them yet, right? So let's say you have the China tank Emperor with the propaganda tower. After upgrade, right, you can like fix this thing, but then we can say, okay, we want to build a package which doesn't contain it, right? And then we just exclude it from this package, and then we have like a more pristine release that then maybe is easier to like get started with, like for testers and players, right? So I think this would be a great way that we have more modularity in our build pipeline, that we can opt in and opt out of certain changes, and then we can figure out like, okay, what works, what doesn't work. Let's disable this one. Let's try this. Let's revisit this. And yeah, so I think that's a good idea. I mean, it's up to what committee wants in the end. At the end of the day, I think, in my opinion, the patch, which is currently labeled a super patch, is a great starting point, because it got a lot of things already solved, already fixed. There was a lot of time spent. It does cater to all game languages. It was always meant to be an improvement to the original game experience, and I think it does achieve that. I think objectively, if Zero Hour was launched with this content that is in there, the game would have been better, right, from the get-go, right? Obviously, now like there are always questions about, yeah, can you now change this after 20 years? And you and I know it well, because we also had some heated debates in the past about this kind of thing. And I think a strategy where we have a more conservative approach to the rollouts could work. So I would let Legionnaire and the teams and you and so on, we could let you drive this kind of thing. And personally, I now, especially since the code is released, I'm more interested now in driving technical things and spending time there. So I'm not so much personally. I'm not so much concerned about some gameplay aspects here and there, right? I still have opinions about things, but yeah, if community overwhelmingly says that, yeah, we don't want this or that, then that's law, right? Because at the end of the day, community will decide what they like, right? So if more than 50% players like that, then it's probably a good thing. If more than 50% dislike that, it's probably not so good thing, right? And hopefully, I mean, you could also change the threshold, right? You could also say, okay, only if players agree by 70% with this, then it's a good change, right? You could also have this kind of metric. And yeah, I think this kind of approach where you ask the community, like, okay, what do you like, what do you dislike, and maybe have like a survey functionality directly in the game where, let's say you play a match and you use the Scud launcher, and the Scud launcher was tweaked in a way, yeah, and then after the match has ended, then there's like a pop-up and asking you, what do you think about the new Scud launcher missile speed or something like that, let's say. And then there would be like some buttons, and then you can click is okay or is bad or something like this, and then could gather some intel from the player base. I think that could also be a nice thing to then understand, like, okay, what do the players actually like, what do they not like, right? I mean, yeah, I think at the end of the day, I think having an open mind and trying things and testing and collecting feedback, I think will be great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of like the idea of the conservative approach as well. But realistically, if you went with that approach to try, I think you're trying to say that it would still work with people on 1.04 without causing mismatches. If you limited yourself in that way, realistically, what big things could you fix? Could you improve the rate of mismatches and the disconnections and anything like that?
I think it will be very hard to fix many things without without changing game state. So there will be a limited amount of things you can do.
Okay.
So I think it will be beneficial to get over this as soon as possible, because it will be much easier. I expect it will be. I think it needs to be a learning curve to first understand what exactly will cause a mismatch, the data mismatch, or like a compatibility mismatch, because it's many things, right? So you need to have like a really good understanding of this, and you need to test a lot, right? So this will be really hard to maintain. So yeah, I think I think it would be great if it would work, but I think it would also be fine, you know, if players know that, yeah, you cannot play with 1.04 players with this thing. But yeah, there will be things possible to fix and not touch compatibility of game state. So for example, anything that happens in the rendering of the game or in the audio, like anything that doesn't affect gameplay. Like for example, the 3D shadow crash, right? When you have a lot of units and they draw shadows, then your game crashes. This can be fixed, no problem, right? But as soon as it affects some unit in some way, how it interacts with something, a weapon or movement or anything like this, then you will inevitably cause a mismatch.
Yeah. Okay, so inevitably at some point they're going to have to get a new version if you want to see noticeable big bug fixes and stuff like that, like mismatches, disconnections, things like that.
Absolutely. If you are serious about fixing 0 hour to its fullest extent, then you need to deviate and make it incompatible. Yeah. There's no other way. Yeah.
But I suppose it goes without saying you probably want to balance that against having 99 different patches. You don't want to have that many. You want to try and reduce it as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yes. There, yeah, of course. I mean, 1,000 patches is probably very complicated. There is the idea, though, to like make all user-generated content easily accessible for all the players. So the idea would be that when you have this new game client that we then build and distribute, that it can discover other game versions and can join the match room of a host that has a different version, and then your install would automatically, or with a push of a button, would download the content and would install it, and then would change it either on runtime or with a quick restart, so that you can join different kind of hosted versions if there are some people who do not have the exact version, but maybe it's a similar version, or maybe it's another mod like Contra mod, and then maybe you just join that if you feel like it. But I think it would be great if all the players would be in one space and everyone, it just sits there, but maybe there's different mods and different versions being played, but you can freely join anything the way you feel like it. I think that would be great value. But yeah, I think in essence it would be great to like have like one main product and not have too many like let's say serious products that want to compete with each other, because then yeah, maybe it's a bit too much for the players, and maybe you have players who really just want to play this one version and the other 50% want to play just this other version, and then you have like this divide. So I don't know, but maybe it would also be fine. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think that's one thing we definitely want to avoid is splitting the community. That's probably one big risk, but I think we're all aware of that and we can somehow work through it. Okay, $1 million question. Loads of questions I got about this. So people are keep saying people are playing on Radmin. People might be playing on Hamachi. People are playing on Revora. People are playing on Game Ranger. We all want one place where we can all come together and we can all play together easily. I know there's Revora at the minute, but it seems like when there's like more than 300 people in the lobby, it crashes. So the ultimate dream, I think, would be you press multiplayer, you press online, and you get on some unofficial servers that we set up. Is that in the realms of possibility? How easy? How much would that cost? A timeline? These are all the kind of questions people are asking.
Absolutely possible. And I wouldn't be surprised actually if someone spins up something within the next weeks or months.
Wow.
Because I expect it not to be that hard, because once you so for example, there are open source game servers on GitHub. So some people build open source server, right? And then you can just make a fork of it, and then you take their client interface and then you hook it up in the game, make all the bindings so that the players can chat and join the lobby, join open match rooms, matchmaking, start session. If you hook this all up, and then you can target that game client to that server with some configuration, and then you host that server, and then the clients can connect and go ahead. That obviously we would need to see like, okay, what server is of good quality, what gives us all the features we need. But I expect that most of them probably will provide all the functionality that GameSpy did 24 years ago. So I wouldn't worry about that. But yeah, I think then it's just a limit of, okay, how big of a server we can get for this thing, that there can be thousands of players on it. Yeah, and basically the server, the good thing is the game server, it's just a backend that does negotiations between players, right? It just puts them into lobbies and then it kicks off the network match. But the network itself is peer-to-peer connection, so the players talk directly with each other. So there's no need for dedicated servers that need to run on a server. So maybe the server will also be relatively light in terms of cost. So maybe it will be pretty cheap. I'm not an expert on server costs and running these kind of things, but yeah, maybe it's simpler than we imagine it is. I expect that maybe we can even have different kinds of servers that we could technically connect to, right? So you could, let's say, we could connect to C&C Online, but we could also connect to this other new big server that we set up. But yeah, I agree. I think it would be great to have like one server which we agree on that everyone plays on, and yeah, I think that would be fantastic.
Okay. Yeah, forgive me if this is an amateur or newbie question, but I'm also not too familiar with servers and stuff like that. So you said there's some open source servers on GitHub. Is that something that could run on someone's PC or server at home, or would it have to be always uploaded to a cloud server somewhere?
I think it can run anywhere where you target it on. If someone has a self-hosted machine at home that would give all the speed and latency, then maybe it can work, but maybe it needs to be in a data center for best latency. And maybe like what modern games do when they are a service game and with servers, what they do is they have like different backends in different locations. But I think this is not necessary for us because the lobby is not so concerned about latency, right? If you take if you take half a second longer to join a lobby because of latency, it doesn't matter much, right? Because it doesn't affect game speed, right? So I think having it just host somewhere in Europe or North America is probably good enough. Maybe in Europe because they're probably the most players. Um, but yeah, I expect that this will work just fine.
Okay. I realize then we only have like 45 minutes ish left, and I still have a bunch of questions. So maybe I still want to get through everyone's questions. So maybe if you can maybe just answer yes or no, or give me a short sentence just so we can try and get through them all. I think this is really useful, by the way. And if we do go over, I think maybe another session would be good, because I'm sure people love hearing your insights.
We instead of shortcutting answers, we can also just like make another session and then continue with the rest if you like.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's see how far we get then. So next question was from Moliere on the Game Replays forum. He was saying after the big fixes, and let's say we did get these servers back, could we have quick match? Is that possible, and how difficult is that?
I mean that plays also into the backend, right? So if the backend does provide quick match functionality, then we just need to hook it up in the game client, and then I expect it can be worked. Yeah.
Okay. That would be life changing, to be honest. I think
Yeah.
if you could go online on one server where everybody is there, 1,000 players with no issues, play quick match, and then you could view the ladder on that same screen online without going to a third party website, that would be the dream, honestly. Okay, a question about the peer-to-peer thing where two computers will connect directly and talk to each other. What about changing that setup to players connect to a server? Is that possible? What benefits might players see if that did come into action?
Yeah, I remember we had such discussion in the Thyme server last year, 2 years ago. So I'm not sure how feasible it is. I'm not convinced that it brings like a tangible benefit. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. It probably will be hard to implement because the game is built with this design in mind of the peer-to-peer connection. So you probably need to change a lot, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there are some clever ways to get it on the dedicated server. But yeah, I think maybe it could cause problems with the deterministic nature of the game, where every frame is deterministic and that allows like the replay playback, for example. But yeah, I would expect it's technically possible. Would it be better? Maybe, maybe not. I think what the easier route will be to look into strategies to make the peer-to-peer connections more efficient and better. So maybe that would be an angle first and could be much easier to do.
Okay. A very hypothetical question then, but let's say you had 6 players in a DEF CON match, and everybody's connection was amazing, except one guy has got this really poor connection, and his ping or his latency is like 50/60. How might that look for the other players? The people on a 10 latency, they're playing at this amazing speed. Would it just be that one guy lagging a lot, or is this a very like too hypothetical question?
Yeah, I mean, if the guy has these latency issues, then there needs to be some strategy to throttle him, right? Because he cannot keep up with the bandwidth or with the latency. So I'm not expert in networking, I have to tell you. So I'm not sure how this would work. And I mean, what happens in FPS games is typically they lag, right? Or they jump and it's hard to aim on them. And yeah, it's not a pleasant experience. So maybe it would be pretty bad in 0 hour as well. I don't know.
Okay. Another question from Moliere. I think it's quite a simple one. I think this might be possible. He's asked about changing the hotkeys inside of the game rather than using the other methods, C&C mixer and so.
Yeah, I think that's technically possible.
Okay, and The custom map list, as you know, we have lots of ranked maps now. Loads of people, like me included, have like 1,000 maps in that custom map list. It's sometimes very difficult to find the map that you want, and people have suggested maybe a word search filter. So you could type in, I don't know, tournament or desert, for example, and it would automatically find your map possible.
Yeah, this sounds like a good idea, the map search. I didn't have this on the radar. If you could do me a favor, maybe send those suggestions and then I can create reports for these. Put
Okay.
them in the repo. This sounds great, yeah, because sometimes scrolling through the list and searching, it just takes an eternity.
Okay. People will be very excited now they've heard that their questions and suggestions are getting logged live in a video.
Of course.
They'll be happy about that. So there's a guy called Waterable on Game Replays. He sometimes comes out with some funny posts, in my opinion. He came out with the idea to have a block function online that could actually physically prevent someone from joining your game in online multiplayer. Does that sound in the realms of possibility?
Yeah, I mean, this is a feature then for client plus backend. I think Online Lobby does have functionality to block players from chatting, right? And you cannot read them anymore.
Correct.
But they can still join?
Yeah, they can.
Yeah, they can. Yeah, then it would be just a matter of saying, okay, if you have this player blocked, they cannot join your hosted match. Yeah, it's probably straightforward to implement.
Okay. Would it also be possible? This is all assuming that the servers came back and everyone was playing online again. That they wouldn't just have the normal online rank like Brigadier General or Court Colonel or whatever they were, but they could also have an expert badge or a master badge from Game Replays as well on there, perhaps.
That's a data-related question. I don't know. I mean, technically it's possible, of course. How feasible it is, you would probably need to have like a feature where you can assign avatars or rewards over the backend, right? So there would have to be someone on the backend would have to decide that you can give this to players, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Then so maybe give like more control to the server that can decorate the players in some way, right?
Mm-hmm. So another question from Waterable. He said, very generally, do we have the ability to upgrade textures now?
That was already possible before the source code release. Yeah.
Okay. So easy one then, yes. If players, so if people wanted to donate money towards this project of developers C++, or donate money for servers or anything like that, because people have mentioned this, do you see that of any value at this point in time? And do you see anything coming up that could be costly that these funds could be used for?
Right now, there's no cost, at least on my part. So I guess if someone hosts a server, there could be some cost, but it's probably also not big of a deal. There is in the General's game page repository in the Super Hackers organization, there is a donation page with some links. But yeah, it's just donations. It goes into the Gentool account and it just sits there and does nothing right now. Yeah, but eventually, like if there are eventually some costs, then like at least we have some capital and could use it then for something, right? If there's some need. Yeah, but
Okay.
typically I expect that there are no big costs. Yeah.
Okay. So there's a few questions about graphics and performance. So you mentioned earlier about probably am I right in saying the priority would be to reduce the cost or how expensive a certain algorithm is first that is causing the game to be slowed down? Is that the priority first, to reduce those costly things?
Priority above what?
Above, like, well, my next question is going to be, people are going to want to say, oh, I want my graphics to look way better than they did in 2003. I want better water, I want smoke, I want all this crazy stuff.
Well, I guess it depends. From every person will probably have their own opinions on that. I can only speak for myself, and maybe what my impression is, what maybe many others would also view it as. So for me personally, I think that stability, performance is much more important than visuals. And I would expect, or I think that this is the case for the majority of players, because at the end of the day, you want to play first. Like the gameplay is king, right? That you can play well. And how it looks, yeah, that comes afterwards. If it looks better, then good. But if it looks the way it is right now, then also okay, right?
Yep. And then let's say then we do get the game in the most perfect state. It never crashes. We fix all the disconnections and bugs and glitches and all that kind of stuff. And we've reduced the cost of, like you say, flame walls and the pathing over mountains. Once we've reached that stage, is it then possible, even in the realms of possibility, to enhance the graphics, like in terms of explosions or the collapsing of buildings or the reflections on the water, stuff like that? Is that even possible?
I suspect so. Yeah. So right now the renderer is DirectX 8.1. I think the first upgrade we would probably do is upgrade to DirectX 9.0, which is a natural upgrade because it's very close to version 8. And I would expect that for the majority of visuals that we expect from the game is well catered to with DirectX 9. But yeah, if someone wants to go really fancy, they could maybe update it to even something newer, or leverage DirectX 9 to improve visuals. I mean, Generals, the original one, doesn't leverage much in terms of shaders. It mostly uses textures to create the visuals and models, of course. But yeah, it's also a matter of art, like how beautiful do the people make the art. But yeah, rendering. I'm not an expert of like renderings related stuff. But yeah, it's certainly possible that someone, for example, makes prettier water, right? That maybe has realistic waves or something like this, right? Yeah.
Okay. So we had a question on game replays from Pidox, who supports and organizing the tournaments and stuff like that. So shout out to Pidox. He said to use Xezon, do you plan to lead the development of things from now? And if so, how do you plan to distribute things?
So after my conversation with Legionnaire yesterday, I think it should be something more decentralized, where there are more stakeholders with different disciplines that lead different efforts. And I would like to be more involved with the technical, like, C++ related things, technical designs, and, reviewing code and stuff like this. And yeah, and so I have to say I'm a bit overwhelmed with like management of things, like the way too many messages coming my way, too many conversations. I can't keep up with reading, especially now where the hype is so big. And I think I would be happy to give away responsibility. So in the past, I have taken way too many responsibilities, managing everything, probably micromanaging too many things for the pain of some others, maybe. That's certainly a possibility. So yeah, I think onboarding more people who take ownership of the things, I think that will be very good.
Okay. And the second part of the question from Pidox was, if there was a new feature to be discussed and you had your idea of how the code might be for that feature, but a volunteer covered it, would you feel the need to double check the code and possibly redo it at a later time?
Well, I mean, it depends on what the quality of that thing is, right? I mean, scrutiny always needs to be applied. So in code, it's common to peer review the code, like the same way that scientists peer review their scientists' reports and discoveries and
Okay.
research, right? So someone will send a pull request and will ask for a review, and then there will be people jumping on it, looking at it, scrutinize it, because I think everyone is interested that we get the highest level implementations for the things we touch, and also are very careful of not breaking anything. And the more eyes that look at these things, the more problems will be detected in advance before it hits the playtesters or hits the player population.
Okay. A question from Sheldor1 on, I think he asked the same question in Discord and on Game Replays. I don't really understand this question, but you probably will better than me. He implied that on your latest stream, I think he's implying to your stream, you mentioned about third-party tools and how they were initially used in the creation of the game, but they were later removed due to copyright issues. Firstly, is that even true, and will that affect us in any way?
I don't understand the question. I'm not sure what he refers to. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, some third-party tools that were initially used in the game's creation, but they were later removed due to copyright issues.
Oh, I don't know what he means.
No, me too.
Maybe he misunderstood something, or maybe I talk garbage. That could also be.
Okay, I'm sure he'll let us know in the comments as well, so we can come back to him if it's unclear. Okay, C&C HD, shout out to him. Okay, so he said now that the Thyme project or Thyme project and the back engineering is now obsolete, and the time that you've spent on it as the super hackers, he's basically saying that the time seems to be wasted, but it actually isn't. He says, what's the most important knowledge that you've gained from that time that you can now use to your advantage now you have access to the source code?
Well, I mean, we already looked at a lot of classes and code and functions. So whenever Jonathan opened reviews, I read every single line that he put there to really make sure that it's logically correct. Because there was a strong desire to also like build Thyme in a way that it's bug-free, right? And so yeah, this way already a lot of learnings were made. But yeah, there are probably also many unknowns. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. And now that the source code is out there, what's the long-term future for Gentool? Will that even still be a thing? Will it be needed, or would it be included in a patch? And in what ways can it be improved? Like he mentions the ticker box and improving the display of that when there's live events. Is that something that could be improved?
My expectation is that the majority of the functionality in Gentool will be obsoleted by a new game client. Because we will simply directly implement the stuff in the game client instead of using Gentool for anything. I think the only thing then uniquely that will remain in Gentool possibly will be the uploading of things, at least for when it is binary incompatible, right? So that's one of the main features that is always working despite the binary incompatibility. But yeah, as far as I'm concerned, Gentool is obsolete going forward, and we should strive for building all the functionality that we want into the game client directly.
Okay. And the last part of C&C HD's question was in these future patches that we talk about that may come out, would it be possible to have some kind of an in-game info box that would link you to all the relevant websites? I don't know, like Game Replays, any relevant Discord channels, like Community Outpost, those kind of things.
Like, can you repeat that question?
Yeah. He's saying in a future patch, would it be possible to have some kind of an information box in the game? I don't know whether it would be like the Gentool menu that pops up now, that basically links you to where most of the community is chatting and arranging tournaments and stuff.
Well, ideally, they would all be on the server that you connect to when you click on online, right? I guess additional informations could be put like in this welcome message on the online server. I never really thought about this because typically like these kind of information are typically external on a website somewhere, right? Where someone puts new content or edits something, right? So I don't know if it needs to be directly in the game. I don't know.
Okay. So Fire for the win 123. He asked on game replays, is it possible to fix this inevitable the unit cap crash that happens in massive free-for-all games and 3v3 Twilight Flame games when all the units freeze? Is that possible to fix? I think we mentioned it before, but
Yeah, I would expect so. That there's just some logic issue somewhere that caps out and then prevents something from allocating correctly. I don't know what it is. Would need to be debugged. Yeah, I expect it's possible.
okay. Question from Sheldor1 again. He said the game code was released under a GPL license. Could you explain in simple terms to people who don't know what this is? What does it mean?
Yeah, I'm actually not an expert on this licensing stuff. I think there are thousands of words inside. It means that we have the ability to modify this code and make distributions of it, release it to players, but we cannot commercially use it. We cannot sell it, right? And we don't own the copyright for it. So yeah, that's I think the simplest.
Okay. This question came up, I think, in the 5-hour Discord call. This famous 5-hour Discord call. So someone basically asked if they got the source code and they wanted to put it into a different engine, let's say like Unreal Engine. Is that even in the realms of possibility, or would you run into so many issues that it's just not even worth looking at?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay.
It sounds like a huge task. And it's probably would be hard to do. Maybe it's worthwhile to check first if other efforts have done this and how successful this was and how long it took. I don't know. It sounds really ambitious.
Okay. Question from Popo. I think this is maybe one of the easier things. Is it possible to have new colors? And he alludes to a game called Valorant, where you're able to have some crazy skins on your guns. Like he alluded to tiger skin color and reddish pink, and maybe you'd have lime green and brown. Could you get these colors into the game now that we have access to the source code?
I think you were already able to do that before because the colors are set up in the ini files.
Okay. Another question from Shelder1. He said, can we have the ability to export the replays with the information about that particular game? So what armies were played, who was the winner, and this might help you analyzing statistics.
Yeah, certainly. And I actually would be a big fan of having even more information in replays, like camera position of the players and chat messages, because this will help with checking like, okay, what did the player actually really do, like in terms of anti-cheat, but also like if someone wants to present it on their YouTube video, then they have more information in there. So yeah, adding more stuff to the replay, I think can be very valuable.
Okay, a big famous issue that players have faced in the history of the game is when they connect to the online servers and you're all excited, you're ready to play your game, you press start and then it tries to connect and you're praying to God that it connects and it says unable to connect to players and kicks you back out. Is that something that could be improved from now?
I do hope so, yeah. I'm not expert on this networking stuff, but yeah, hopefully we can figure something out.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think like other C&C games, I think it's like Kane's Wrath or C&C 3, they tell you in the lobby already if you're going to be able to connect to the player before you actually press start and then it kicks you out. Is that probably the best we could get, do you think, based on your knowledge? Or do you think it could even be improved beyond that?
it is a reasonable assumption that such a feature is desirable, because if one player has a firewall that really does not allow this kind of connection, then there is no strategy that we can deploy to get through that firewall, right? It just blocks those connections, so nothing we can do. So in that case, yeah, like a early warning that this player sucks, yeah, would be great, right?
Yeah. Yep. Okay, question that I wrote, that I was thinking the other day again on this Discord call, is that it would obviously be very costly for EA to make a brand new patch, fix all the fixes and stuff, and it seems like instead of that, they've released the source code and will now allow the community who will just naturally fix all of these things over the coming years. So do you see a world where we create as a community the most amazing, perfect patch, and eventually once everybody is on board, we would give that to EA and they might possibly in a dream world release that what we've created as an official patch?
I don't know. I I have my doubts, but I had my doubts about the source code as well. So yeah, I think anything can happen now. Right? I don't know.
And where this all started from, the release of the source code, do you think that came from, like, I know a few years ago, I don't know if you contacted EA and you asked them, please release the source code, it would improve things a lot. Do you think this all stemmed from that? Is this all down to you?
Oh, I wouldn't say so. Maybe it played a bit of part to inspire some things, but I don't think so. I think it's mostly CC Hyper's doing, and the upper management at EA who oversee these franchises. But I do think that, and I think they also wrote it in their release statement, that they saw how engaged we are with this title, with Zero Hour mostly, which Generals is a bit more on the sleepy side. Yeah, they did right that they see what we do, and I think that also includes video presentations, of course, as well, and tournaments, right? And yeah, I think that that it's probably the everything coming together that just like pulled so many players and so many eyes, that they probably felt like, yeah, these guys are on a path to make more of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was a few comments on, I think it was on my YouTube post, where people said that there's a bit of hype around RTS at the minute because Tempest Rising, which is a game that's a bit like some of the other Command and Conquers, it's going to be released in 1 month's time in April, and EA wants to kind of ride that wave of the hype around RTS at the minute. Do you have any comment on that? Do you think that's true, or do you think that's just a coincidence of the timing?
Sorry, what is true?
That people on YouTube were trying to say that EA have released this source code right now at this time to ride the wave of hype around RTS, because there's a little bit of hype because this new game is going to get released in April.
I don't know how recent is this hype. If it's just a recent hype for this Tempest Rising, then probably not, because like preparing this kind of release probably takes a longer time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I suppose Tempest Rising has been in development for a number of years. I think it was quite clear they would release in 2024 or 2025. So, yeah, it could just be a total coincidence. They could be trying to ride a wave. At the end of the day, probably I don't really care. We get the source code and this
doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, does it? Okay, so I actually only had one other question, so it means we're probably going to finish in time. It's a bit of a big one, though. So after all of the fixes are prioritized, that's obviously the main priority. Ultimately, as I said in my video, balance and all the controversial changes will come up. I suggested maybe the top 15 players would be some kind of a council. And I think in your reaction video, you said everybody should have a voice and it should be a vote. So I think like going forward in the next few weeks, I might try to host maybe another podcast, and maybe I will get all of the expert players like on one big call, and we would probably go through every single change that you've already got listed in the game patch, because I think that's a really good starting point.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to hear the feedback of things. Um, um, but as I said in my reaction to your video, that I think there's also great value in like testing this and to get like a feel for how it actually plays out. To get like a better opinion, because we can theorize all day long, and I also only theorize, right? So I'm in the same boat there. Like we try to reason. Okay, what is reason? We know this thing sucks, right? Or it's too strong. What can we do to make it better? Let's try this thing, see what happens, right? But yeah, I do expect that there probably will be many things where we say, oof, this is too much, or too much for now. Maybe it's okay for later. But yeah, historically, I was not so concerned about this, because I didn't plan about rolling it out anytime soon, because the design or the timeline was that we need Thyme project as well, right? That was the timeline. But now, since that has completely changed, the timeline is completely different now, and everyone is now jumping on this goal that we have started many years ago, which is great, because hopefully this allows us to push to it much sooner. I think like if you start or others start an effort to have like this expert player group to review things, I think it's great. Then do it and put your feedback into the repository, and of course everyone will take a look. Yeah, my suggestion was to that we try to make different kind of builds. As I said, so we have a core pristine that is really like no controversials, right? Just fixes and improvements, and then have another one where we have the controversials in, and then we can like maybe dial up or dial down. But you need to keep in mind also that like if we go like with a step-by-step approach, it also means that you need to reevaluate everything as you go up, right? So like let's say you changed just 2 things, and then you say, okay, this is good for a start. Then next time you change 3 things, and then you always need to test all the stuff, right? So you need a lot of testing then to say, okay, I'm happy with this now, right? And then yeah, so it will take a really long time to be happy, but maybe that's also fine, because then you get accustomed to all these changes, and then maybe after a while these older controversial changes feel natural and you got used to it, and then you're like, yeah, this is the way it should have always been. Let's do a bit here because that still sucks, right? So maybe that's a very good approach, and I think Legionnaire wants to push for this kind of thing, and yeah, could be good.
Okay. So yeah, I know I keep mentioning about asking the best players in the game, the top 15, top 20, top 50, whatever. And I know there's also the other opinion that all levels of players should have an opinion, even the most newbiest, the mid-level players, everybody. So it's kind of hard to navigate. You don't want to seem like elitist, like, oh, only the top 20 players have a view and everybody else's opinion. You don't want that at all. And you also don't want an opinion where Bob123 in the lobby, who's played one or two games, has the same is able to dictate the balance of the game, because obviously he hasn't got enough experience. You want to strike kind of a balance. So it got me thinking, like, what do other games do? The only other games I really follow, to be honest, are like Counter-Strike, StarCraft 2, where I think they do focus on the better players, and they balance it at the pro level, and then they let it trickle down from there. So yeah, you've got to kind of balance it. It's a difficult path to navigate, because you want everyone to have an opinion. But I keep thinking in my mind back to, if you had a newbie game on Tournament Desert, and there's a guy who's super weapon general, and he just places down a load of EMP turrets, and the other guy is GLA, and he doesn't know what to do, against the EMPs because they're both noobs. And the guy just goes, "Oh, the game's totally broken. These EMPs are ridiculous." But then at the top level, you would see probably the super weapon general has one of the weakest win rates, because at the top level, the pros are rushing the super weapon, and the super weapon dies very quick. Sure, he's powerful later on when he gets the Alpha Auroras out, but often they get rushed and they get killed. So that's the difference, I think. The games at the top level are very different to at possibly the newbie level, and the opinions can vary wildly. And that just leans me to think it should be balanced at the pro level, and then it should trickle down from there. I don't know if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, it is reasonable because these players will leverage the game to its maximum, right? They will try to exploit all the possible things to win the match, make the best use of all the units, and figure out how to use them best. Like, someone can be a noob with a Humvee, and another one can wreck the entire base with one Humvee, right? So, right. So there can be huge differences. But I think it's also important to recognize that we want every player to be happy, right? And also to stay in the game and then become this pro player, right? So, like for me, I think it's always sad to see that if someone cries about the Aurora, right, because he doesn't know what to do against it, or cries about the demo bikes, So it's sad to see, and it shows a bit like some mistakes in game design, right? If players hate these things. So it would be great if solutions would be for this kind of things. But yeah, I can also see that maybe we say, "Oof, touching this is too controversial." Yeah. But there's also the possibility, like, let's say someone is really unhappy because he struggles against these things, that maybe we add features which allow players to host matches with handicaps, right? So one player starts with a better handicap, or the pro player starts with a lower handicap, is that right? And so basically has a disadvantage, yeah, and a higher handicap, is that maybe, yeah. So he starts with a disadvantage. Like, let's say you could say, okay, this player, all damage from his weapons deal minus 20%, right? So he's weaker, right? Or the other player plus 20% damage, right? And then you could say, okay, this way we balance it a bit between the different kind of players. They get a bit of an advantage here because they suck, right? So maybe this would level the playing field also a bit, and then maybe it would also be more acceptable to say, okay, we cater it towards the top pros, but if you suck, then you still have the opportunity to maybe use a handicap, right? So it could be a way. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm interested if people want to let us know in the comments of this video if they follow any other games and they see how the balance is tweaked in the competitive scene or in general. Let us know in the comments, and we'll have a read and see the best way to approach, because you do want to approach it in a balanced way. You don't want it to seem elitist. The top 20 players dictate the balance and that's it. You want everyone to have a voice, and it should be easy for people to pick up. I do think the demo bike thing, so like a newbie player, yeah, you sit there with your Vs, a demo bike comes in, all your Vs get wiped out, and you go crazy, you start slamming the keyboard. But then at the pro level, when you learn to deal with demo bikes, providing there's no lag, loaded Vs are actually very good against demo bikes. You can manually click them very, very quickly if you're that kind of player, and you can shoot them before they get anywhere near your Vs. So that's kind of the difference, I think. And just another point, so I know in your video you mentioned about like the sentry drone for USA and how it's the most useless thing to ever exist, and I totally agree, by the way. A similar thing happened in Counter-Strike, where there was some guns like the AK-47 and the M4 that were like the most popular guns and they were always used, but there was also some useless guns that never got used, just like the sentry drone. And Counter-Strike tried to implement these patches, and they tried to make every gun useful. I'm talking like 40, 50 guns, however many is in Counter-Strike. And I think the overwhelming feedback from that was actually negative, and people were like, every gun shouldn't be as useful as the other one. Some things are just meant to be useless. and that's just the way it is. So, and I think that kind of direction that Counter-Strike, correct me if I'm wrong, anyone who knows more about this, but from what I saw, Counter-Strike were trying to make every gun useful, and the feedback was pretty negative, and people didn't like it. People like to stick with the popular stuff. And I remember, I think it was patch 1.06 or something like that, a community patch, where people buffed the sentry drone. And I remember I tested it against Logica, and Logica made loads of sentry drones and wrecked my entire base with sentry drones. And I just thought, this is so ridiculous. So maybe some things are just meant to be useless, I'm trying to say. Like, not everything needs a use.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Yeah, maybe, but it would be great if there was a richer variety in tools you can use, right? That's also maybe a
Yeah.
plus, right? Because like the USA is essentially the Humvee general, right? So, and some players may think that maybe it would be great if they can also use some other things. Like no one builds a normal Raptor, right? Or a normal Comanche, right?
And they do,
So,
actually. The size of Maricar, they're making it a lot of it.
okay, against like
yeah.
rocket buggies, yeah, of course,
Yeah.
yeah, but generally, it's like, yeah, I don't know, but I guess it's something that can be figured out when playtesting to see like, okay, if we add this in the mix,
Yeah.
does it make the game richer or does it suck then? Is it bad? Is it good? I think
Yeah.
it's just something to have an open mind and figure out, okay, do we like it or not? I mean, so I guess the learning from the sentry drone spam there was that it shouldn't be too cheap because then it becomes outrageous. So that was a learning, I guess. And I think that's already good if you figure out how to not do it, right? That's also good.
Yeah. I suppose my thinking with the sentry drone is that the USA, yeah, it's the Humvee general, but it's also the scan general and the anti-stealth general. So it's got the scan ability, it's got the drone from the general's promotions, it's got Vs that can detect stealth, it's got the strategy center that can detect stealth, it's got the pathfinder that can detect stealth. It's like the anti-stealth general, basically. And Vs can counter infantry. So the sentry drone is kind of an anti-infantry if you upgrade the machine gun, and it's anti-stealth, but USA already has anti-infantry and anti-stealth. So that was just my kind of thinking. Maybe it's supposed to stay useless. But yeah, I agreed. The open mind approach is the best approach. And if you really did want to make the game deeper, the last comment I've got is that other games like StarCraft 2, you don't just do one upgrade. Like you upgrade chain guns, for example, for the China General, that increases your Gatling damage by 15%. In StarCraft 2, you upgrade it like +1, +2, +3. So in Zero Hour, that might translate to 15% on chain guns, +20%, +25%. That could make the game deeper and more strategies, let's say. I don't know if you've thought about that. It's probably a bit too advanced at this stage.
I mean, technically, it's certainly possible to implement this with the current tech, but yeah, so right now we didn't go that far with the changes we applied. So actually, I would say that the state that is currently in the main branch of the Super Patch project is relatively conservative. Maybe too drastic for some, right, or for many. I'm not sure, but it could be much more wild with like new units or new upgrades or new abilities. We don't have any of that. This all the same factions, all the same units, all the same ability, all the same upgrades. There's nothing new. It's really the same game, but there are tweaks to certain aspects like timings and damages maybe and some armor. And some of these come through bug fixes and other come straight through just tweaking things, right? So the bug fixes, they are probably like more of a problem because if you want a bug-free game, but the bug affects the balance, then yeah, it's harder to make this fix, right? But yeah, the tweaks, we have been pretty conservative, but yeah, maybe not conservative enough, right? But that's up for community to then decide in the end, right?
Okay. So that's all of my questions. Just a thank you for spending the time here with me today. I'm sure everyone will have enjoyed hearing their questions get answered, and I'm sure there'll be more in the future. So yeah, a big thanks from me and the viewers. And if you want to do this again, it would be a pleasure.
Yeah, I guess we can talk again about topics, maybe about specifics and implementation details. Yeah. But also keep in mind, like all the information about developments are always publicly visible in the GitHubs. So there are loads of issue reports, conversations, changes, and so on. So everyone can go there and just visit and put their opinions there and engage in discussions. And I think that's the way it should be, to just try to contribute in a meaningful way where we figure out what the best solution, the best implementation for any particular topic is, right?
Mm-hmm. Is that the Super Hackers one, or is there a different one now?
So right now, as far as I know, we have the super hacker effort. So there is the old General's game page repository, and we now also opened the new one for the source code. So these are two separates, right? So the
Okay.
source code is one that concerns all code, and the patch repository concerns all data, right? And they are kept separate. And my expectation is that patch will build on top of the code repository, but the code is independent from the patch, right? So code is something that is more universal. It also caters to mods and cross-platform and all sorts of things. It doesn't just cater towards patch specifically, but it will enable the patch to do certain things if it needs some additional functionality to enable to do something that we need.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so that concludes the interview then, guys. I know I asked loads and loads of questions there, but probably I've missed some, and probably you've got loads more questions just hearing some of the answers there from Xezon. And I imagine over the next coming weeks, people will have even more as well. So, yeah, I do plan, maybe I'll contact Xezon again in the coming weeks. If we have enough questions, we'll do another one. And I also plan to do this expert call as well, where we'll get all the pro players together and we'll go through all of the balance changes. I know the other stuff should be prioritized for now, but I do think balance eventually will come up. And whether the expert opinion is listened to or valued at all, we're just going to do it anyway, and then we're just going to see where it leads. Just want to contribute as much as I possibly can. So GG, let us know any comments down below. It's actually my birthday today, and this is my present to you. So GG, I'll see you very soon.